Hey everybody, it's Trevor here with the channel where every day is range day. And in this week's video, we're going to be going through a quick review of the FNP-45 Tactical from FN America. Let's check it out. Now this FNP-45 here, which is clear, is not the primary handgun that I usually run at the range, but it is a loaner from my dad that I've had for the past year or so that I've had the chance to try out whenever we hit the range. But I have enjoyed my time shooting it. I wanted to do a quick overview of the weapon itself, as well as a general review of my experiences with it for the past year or so. Now to start off, this is the FNP-45 ACP, and it is a full-size duty firearm from FN America. It's got about a 5-inch barrel and it comes with 15 round magazines for a 45 ACP, which isn't too bad considering the caliber. It is a double action, single action, semi-automatic handgun, so it will have the hammer and a manual safety on there accordingly. Briefly going over the features of the gun from one end to the other as we start, you can see that it does have about a 5-inch stainless steel barrel, and the Tactical Edition does come with a threaded barrel here should you have a suppressor for this. It comes with a threaded end cap here to protect the threads if you're not running a suppressor, and I have not had the opportunity to shoot this suppressed because I don't have a suppressor. Going back from there, it does come with Trigicon Bright and Tough night sights, all steel sights. Very durable, great sights. I have them on my Glocks and things like that. Good choice there. The full-size slide is all steel and does have front and rear serrations, and moving closer to the back you can see that it is optics ready. This was a newer concept at the time when the FNP was first released, and you can definitely find optics ready handguns pretty commonplace nowadays. But more or less this does have a slide cutout for optics and does come with a variety of optics plates and screws to accommodate everything from an RMR that I have on here to probably Delta Point Pros and other things with similar footprints. Being that this is an RMR footprint compatible handgun, it'll also fit your Holosuns and things like that that share the same footprint. Moving back from there, of course, we do have the hammer because it is a double action, single action style handgun. I normally don't carry double action, single action handguns. I like just the plain striker fired, so you don't have to pull through that super heavy double action trigger stage. But I gotta say this trigger is quite nice. Of course, the single action is very light and is quite enjoyable for a 45 ACP. This gun is pretty soft shooting in general. The double action stage is pretty heavy when you pull that hammer all the way back, probably about 8 or 10 pounds even. It's very, very heavy, but if you just pull the hammer back, it's a very nice and light trigger, maybe 3 pounds or something like that. I've never tested it with the gauge, but when you're actually firing the weapon, once you get that double action shot off, all the follow-ups are super nice and clean with that light break on the single action stage of the trigger, and I do like it quite a bit. Of course, moving down from there, we do have the takedown lever up front, works just fine, and then we move back into the slide lock lever or the slide release lever and the manual thumb safety. Now all of these controls are ambidextrous, which is quite nice, so you can activate them both from each side of the gun if you are right or left-handed. But my main complaint here is that the slide lock lever is pretty small and very close to the thumb safety. I don't like thumb safeties in general. They're just kind of in the way of where I want to put my thumb with the thumb's forward grip on a handgun. But I get why it's here if you're carrying it cocked and locked with a super light single action trigger stage. Especially for a duty use firearm, that's basically essential if you're going to be rolling around or getting hit and knocked around with this thing holstered or otherwise. So it does make the manual thumb safety somewhat necessary. A consequence of that though is when the safety is off, and you like to put your thumbs kind of up and forward with the modern handgun grip, you can see that the safety does sort of get in the way of where I want my thumb to go, and it also kind of blocks me from reaching the slide lock lever whenever you're doing a reload from a slide lock back position. Now you can kind of reach your thumb up and over it and get to it, but it's just a whole heck of a lot harder to reach at compared to something like a Glock. Going down from there, of course, we have the ambidextrous mag release, works just fine, and then the nice textured grip. Now this gun will come with like 3 or 4 different sets of back straps based on what size hand you have. I just have the regular one because I have pretty regular sized hands. The checkered pattern is nice and textured, not too aggressive, but it definitely won't have you slipping around at all. I like that quite a bit. There's a teeny bit of undercut under the trigger guard here, so you can get as high up on there as you can, but compared to something like a Glock, this does have a relatively low grip on the tang of the gun here, so the bore axis of the weapon does sit rather high. For those of you that don't know, the bore axis relationship is basically how high or how close your hand can get on your grip right here to the line of action of the recoil, which is basically along the barrel. And generally, the higher up your grip is on the gun, the closer you are to this recoil, the easier it is to control because there's less muzzle flip. Something like this Glock here doesn't have that much space between the little beaver tail where you can get your hand up in, and you can basically get the top of your hand level with the bottom of the slide. It's a lot lower bore axis than the FN here, and therefore the realized or felt recoil is a bit lower. You just have a bit better time managing shots just because you can get your hand that much higher up on the gun. You can see there's about a ½ inch of space where the top piece of the frame is just sitting over your hand, and your thumb is kind of funneled into this little groove right here, maxing out the grip height right about there. If you look at the two guns back to back, you can kind of see that extra space between the bottom of the slide and the top of the trigger. So the bore axis is a tad bit high on this gun, but surprisingly enough, it is still very soft shooting, especially for a 45. Some of that is in part to the gun size. It is quite large, which is what you're looking for in a duty size firearm, but that also helps with the recoil. More mass is generally harder to move, and I do enjoy shooting this weapon quite a bit. But moving back to the frame, the trigger guard is nice and rounded, and then you do have a Picatinny rail up front for mounting on lights or things like that. And having some sort of rail up front to allow for a light or other attachments is pretty necessary if you're looking to take a gun into a duty environment. Moving from there, we'll go down to the mag well. It's not super aggressively flared, but there is a little bit of flaring there on the bottom to help with your reloads, and it does come with two 15-round magazines. They have a nice little sweep here on the bottom. FN says they help you for rolling the gun forward somewhat and prone to get a proper presentation. I haven't tested it in that capacity, but it does have a nice little lip for you to grab onto should you have to strip mags out. Speaking of stripping out magazines, I have ran into a weird issue with some of the FN magazines that I have with this gun. Now I have about 6 mags for it, but it does come with 2. And I have 2 different varieties. They're both 15 round mags for 45 ACP, and they're both double stack. However, one of them only has the 3 holes on the back to see your ammo count, and then another set has 2 columns or holes on each side, so you can see the count as you go down the magazine. And for some reason I've noticed that only the 3-hole mags seem to load and fall easily from the firearm, whether they're loaded or not. You can see here that the 3-hole variant goes right in and just drops right out, just as they're supposed to, but this other variant with the 2 columns of holes is a little tougher to get in there, and it does not fall out easily. You kind of have to yank these out even if they're loaded. They just won't fall out. I'm not sure if they're just old and worn out, maybe newer ones would function, but I did take a set of calibers to each of these and found out that the 3-hole variant is actually about a 1/100th of an inch or so narrower around the main magazine portion. About 0.96 versus about 0.97 inches on the width here. And that's likely responsible for the extra bit of resistance that you encounter with that different variant of mags. I haven't had any problems with either variant of magazine being able to reliably feed ammo into the gun as it cycles and fires, and the reloads are a lot more difficult with these, so you basically have to strip the mag out each time, and they just don't seat as easily into the mag well. That being said, that's the only reliability concern that I've had with this handgun at all. I've never had any malfunctions for the actual firing of the weapon. And all I've ran through it is pretty cheap 45 ACP from Thule ammo, I'm pretty sure. Some people say the FNP is somewhat ammo particular. I haven't really come across that, but it's still a good idea to test any kind of ammunition that you plan on carrying in your firearm, especially if you plan to use it on a defensive CCW scenario or even duty use for sure. But aside from the gun itself, it will also come with this nice FN America bag. Opening up, you can see that we have plenty of little slots for the gun itself, as well as magazine pouches, what looks like a suppressor sleeve, and a little pouch for all the different optics plates and back straps. Of course, the main firearm will situate itself right in here. You can squeeze more mags in and around it. Taking a look at the other goodies it comes with, of course, a couple different cases. This has all the different optics plates and screws. Then you also have the extra back straps that come with it, based on what size hand you have. Something to note with the optics compatibility here is that it does come with a normal cover plate if you're not running an optic, but also has 2 different style plates for different hole patterns. This is probably the Delta Point Pro variant, and of course I have the RMR footprint on there right now. Going from there, of course, it does include all of the screws you'll need for the different footprints that screw both onto the gun and then through the optics themselves. But it is a pretty nice carrying case that you come with it, and tons of room if you're ended up packing this thing around. But overall, I have really enjoyed shooting this gun from time to time. It's not my main range gun. I usually train with Glocks just so I'm really good at that platform. But this has been a super fun handgun to use on the range just when I'm in the mood for something a little bit different. FN America makes pretty solid firearms all the way around. Parts are super solid. The action's very smooth. You can tell it's made from very high quality materials, and it does function very well. I haven't had any reliability concerns with it. The trigger is super great, especially in the single action stage of that trigger. From there, the ambi controls are quite nice and work very well. The grip's super well textured. The only funny thing is just the difference in these 2 styles of mags that I have. One works great spout just shoots out of the mag well like that when you're ready for a reload. And another kind is just a hair bigger for whatever reason. I'm not sure if it's just an error in the manufacturing, but they're slightly larger and they do not fall free from there at all. You basically have to rip them out. But overall, I've had a pretty positive experience with the FNP-45, and you can probably find these for around $800 or $900 these days. FN America has also come out with a newer version of the FNP called the FNX, which makes slight improvements to some of the characteristics of the FNP that you can see here, namely being the slightly higher bore axis present on this gun has been lowered a little bit in the FNX. There's also a couple other creature comfort style upgrades for more of the ergonomics and accessibility of the handgun. Well, that looks like it's going to be it for the video today, guys, on my brief overview and thoughts on the FNP-45 from FN America. The FNP-45 Tactical Edition comes pretty kitted out. You can see here in the flat dark earth with bright and tough suppressor height night sights from Trigicon, a nice threaded barrel if you have a suppressor, and it's also optics ready to take common optics like the Trigicon RMR and others. Got a pick rail on the bottom for all your other accessories, and there's really not too much you'd actually need to do to this gun to upgrade it right out the box. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like down below in the comments, and if you have any questions about the FNP-45 or anything else we mentioned in this video, feel free to leave them down below in the comments. We would love to hear from you. And as always, make sure to subscribe to the channel, where every day is range day. Thank you for watching.